Welcome to Animecaps. In this video, we will explain Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. This anime tells the story of a 29-year-old game programmer. After a nap, he mysteriously wakes up in a parallel world that resembles some of the fantasy RPG worlds he worked on, and becomes a 15-year-old boy named Sato who can obliterate enemies with his skills. Can he uncover the secrets of the parallel world and return to his original world? Let's find out in Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. The anime begins by showing Ichiro Suzuki, a 29-year-old game programmer who decides to take a short nap because he is too tired to work on the weekends. However, how surprised Ichiro was when he woke up and found that he was in a parallel world that resembled the fantasy world in the RPG he was working on. Not only that, in this parallel world, Ichiro turns into a 15-year-old boy named Sato. With something resembling a menu screen that appeared before his inner eye, Sato could tell that an army of lizardmen was approaching him. The lizardmen army immediately ambushed Sato and launched an all-out attack at him. The panicked Sato then uses his 3 special meteor rain attack options that can obliterate the entire army to nothing. As a result of his counterattack, Sato's level increased dramatically from level 1 to 310, and Sato became one of the most powerful people in the parallel world. After killing one last lizardman, Sato then increased his meteor skill and tried the skill to determine how much damage his attack had. It turned out that the explosion was quite powerful and was able to destroy the place. Sato rushed to escape so as not to be affected by the explosion. After successfully reaching a safe place, Sato started using some of the items he got after defeating the lizardmen army. Sato also increased his strength by increasing his skill level, and intended to head to the nearest kingdom. On the way, Sato was attacked by a giant dragon. Since his level was quite high, Sato just fell on his face and was completely unharmed. He then chased the dragon away by throwing stones at it, but the dragon headed towards the royal troops who were preparing to attack. Sato saw a girl preparing to attack the giant dragon, but the girl was blown away when the dragon attacked her first. Quickly, Sato immediately saved the girl. After Sato brought the girl to a safe place, the girl was very grateful to Sato and introduced herself as Zaina Marienthal. Zaina is a 17-year-old mage soldier who joined the military to avoid being married to a noble by her parents. Not long after, Zaina's friends came, who seemed worried about the girl's safety and suspected Sato. Sato then uses a lying skill so that Zaina and his friends are no longer suspicious of him. Sato is then taken to the kingdom, where Sato must first register. He registered himself as someone who was still at level 1 because he wanted to hide the fact that he was one of the most powerful people in the world. After registering, Sato is told that he must renew his contract every 10 days so as not to become a slave in the kingdom. When Sato was about to look for an inn, suddenly a girl grabbed his arm and dragged him to the inn where she worked. The girl introduced herself as Martha, and Sato decided to stay there. Sato and Martha were shopping at the market when they accidentally met 2 little girls who were being bullied just because they were slaves. Then, Sato immediately saves them. After thanking Sato for helping them, the 2 little girls left. The 2 little girls turned out to be a 10-year-old dog demi-human and a cat demi-human. The next day, Zaina came to Sato and took him for a city tour. On the way, they saw 3 slaves being bullied in public. Sato immediately found out some of the masterminds behind the suppression of the slaves, and managed to incapacitate them one by one. After that, Sato told the citizens not to be provoked by the people who oppressed the slaves because they just wanted to take big profits. Just when Sato was about to clash with the slave oppressors, suddenly a monster appeared that transported them all, including Sato and Zaina, into a labyrinth. In the labyrinth, Sato encounters the 3 slaves, but gets separated from Zaina, whose whereabouts are unknown. Since the 3 slaves didn't have names, Sato ended up giving them names. Sato gave the name Pochi for a 10-year-old dog demi-human, and Tama for a 10-year-old cat demi-human. As for the 17-year-old girl who is a lizardkin demi-human, Sato gave her the name Lisa. The 3 of them seemed happy that they now had names, one of the things a slave had never had before. Sato then gave Lisa a weapon to protect the 3 of them from the labyrinth monsters, while Pochi and Tama were in charge of keeping an eye on the situation. The 4 of them were attacked by monsters, but Sato was able to easily defeat them. Lisa then took the core part of the monster's body, which she said could be sold. Sato then plans to level up Lisa, Pochi, and Tama so they can become stronger. After successfully going through various obstacles, the 3 of them managed to reach a higher level than before and become stronger. Halfway through the labyrinth, Sato and the others met a group of warriors who were having a hard time fighting monsters. They also helped the soldiers to defeat the monster. Not long after, Sato was finally able to meet again with Zaina. They then found a chest and thought that it contained treasure. But after opening it, it turns out that what appears is actually a terrible demon. The demon then hypnotized them all into fighting each other. Sato, who is immune from hypnosis, immediately paralyzes Lisa, Pochi, and Tama from fighting each other and endangering their safety. The demon then attacks Sato, knocking him to the bottom of the abyss. But Sato then rushed back up while wearing a disguise so they would not find out that he was very strong. After wearing a disguise, Sato was no longer holding back from bringing out his true strength in order to defeat the demon. Sato was able to easily defeat the demon. However, the demon finally showed its true form, which was much bigger and stronger. Sato then immobilized the giant demon with ordinary fire magic, before finally slashing at the demon's body and destroying it. After Sato managed to defeat the demon, they all finally managed to get out of the labyrinth. After that, Lisa, Pochi, and Tama are set to become Sato's slaves. Not only that, Sato also bought 2 human slaves, named Arisa and Lulu. Sato then invites them all to dinner and buys them new clothes. After that, Sato and the others return to the inn to rest. However, the innkeeper forbade demi-humans to stay there, so Lisa, Pochi, and Tama had to sleep in the barn. Even so, the 3 of them did not seem to mind it, because they are used to being slaves. Arisa then reveals that she is in love with Sato and introduces herself as someone from Japan who has been reincarnated into the parallel world. Because of that, Arisa tries to approach Sato, knowing that Sato is from Japan. Sato then asks why Arisa becomes a slave. Arisa tells that she used to be a princess of the kingdom. Because of her high knowledge, Arisa is able to make her kingdom one of the richest kingdoms in the world. However, one of the palace officials has betrayed and staged a coup d'etat. One day, her kingdom was attacked by a demon, so Arisa and Lulu managed to escape from the palace. But in the middle of their escape, Arisa and Lulu are caught by the slave traders and sold by them. The next day, Sato asks Zena out on a date and plans to find a place to live so that he and Zena can live together. Sato meets a woman named Nadi, who helps him find a place to live for Sato. Sato and the others then decided to watch a drama show about a mage's revenge against the nobles who had killed his wife. However, when his revenge was fulfilled, the mage was killed by a holy knight instead. In the middle of the show, they were suddenly attacked by an insect monster. Sato and the others also rushed to fight the insect monsters. One of the monsters managed to break into the odd job shop and attack Nadi. However, the manager of the shop, a man named Yuya, manages to save Nadi because Yuya turns out to be a green-haired elf who is quite strong. Long story short, Sato and the others managed to defeat the insect monsters, and things were safe again. At night, Sato goes around the city and meets a shadowy figure. Sato managed to defeat the figure and save a rat knight and his princess who was attacked by the shadow figure. Sato then took the 2 of them to the odd job shop for treatment. It turns out that the princess is a 130-year-old juvenile elf with magical abilities named Mia. The next day, Mia was awake, but her body was still weak. Nadi then offered Sato a horse carriage to make it easier for them to travel. Sato buys it and asks Lulu to teach him how to ride a horse carriage. When Sato and Lulu were riding in the horse carriage, Sato realized that they were being followed, and Sato had suspicions on an owl that had been following them for a while. Sato then returned to the odd job shop and met Mise, the rat man who had regained consciousness. According to Mise, Mia is being targeted by a mysterious magician because she has very great magical powers. Not long after, suddenly appeared a powerful sorcerer who turned into a king of the undead named Zen. Sato immediately fought against him with the help of Arisa. They managed to injure Zen, but Zen manages to kidnap Mia. Sato rushed after them, but he was trapped in the shadow dimension instead. Sato can easily get out of the shadow dimension. However, Zen then moved Sato into the cradle, so Sato had no other choice but to conquer the cradle to get out of there. Inside the cradle, Sato meets a monster in the form of a dryad who is able to move people between locations within the cradle. Sato also asked her to transfer himself to the 100th floor in exchange for magic energy. Arriving at the 100th floor, Sato met several homunculi in the form of a comely human female, an iron golem who was created by Zen. Sato managed to beat them all with ease. After reaching the 200th floor, Sato finally confronts Zen, where Zen says that he will hand over the holy sword to Sato if he manages to defeat his entire army. Sato was involved in a fierce battle with all of Zen's henchmen and managed to defeat them all. As per the agreement, Zen then handed over the holy sword to Sato. Zen then tells that he used to be a reincarnated person who was reborn into a loving noble family in a fantasy world. But then, Zen was betrayed by a nobleman who was jealous and wanted his wife, which leads to his death, the execution of his family, and the rape and death of his wife. Zen's intense desire for revenge caused him to rise as a powerful undead to avenge the death of his family by killing not only the nobles responsible, but their entire family as well. However, the distorted story of Zen's life in the drama that Sato watched presents Zen as the villain and the noble as the hero instead. After that, Zen challenges Sato to a contest of strength and will for custody of Mia, but his actual desire is to die at the hands of a true hero. After Sato passes the tests, he slays Zen, ending his immortal undead existence. Before he disappears, Zen warns Sato to watch over Arisa and not to make the same mistakes that he did. After that, Sato saves Mia, Dryad, and all the homunculus, then takes them all out of the cradle. One of the homunculus decided to come with Sato, and he named the girl Nana. Sato is finally able to reunite with Zena, who misses him so much. Sato and the others then intend to take Mia back to where she came from. Zena intends to go with Sato, but it turns out that Zena has to wait a year before she can go with him. On the way to Mia's hometown, Sato begins to study magic to increase his level. Sato and the others finally arrived at Mia's place of origin and were warmly greeted by the Rat Knights. Mia and the Rat Knights are very grateful for the help of Sato and the others who managed to bring Mia home safely. Sato then went to the bar and treated everyone there. The next day, Sato enters a shop and is attracted by a magic scroll. He then disguises himself and buys the magic scroll to increase his power. That night, Sato accidentally enters the illusion forest and fights with the guards there. Sato then met a witch who asked Sato to come to her house. He is then given a healing magic potion on the condition that he must deliver a letter to the city leader named Birkins. The next day, Sato sees the witch's apprentice being chased by a group of bandits. Sato managed to save the little girl, but they lost a lot of healing potions and only 120 bottles were left out of a total of 300 bottles. Sato then went to Birkins and reported the matter. But Birkins didn't want to hear any excuses and demanded 300 bottles of healing potions as agreed. Sato then tried to make a healing potion based on the knowledge the witch had taught him. However, the bandits attack again, so Sato must immediately secure the potion. Sato finally managed to make 300 bottles of healing potions and handed them over to Birkins. Unexpectedly, Birkins rejected it outright. But then, a noble named Earl Kuhano came and said that Birkins was a despot. Birkins and Earl Kuhano then engaged in a fierce battle. However, when Earl Kuhano was about to kill Birkins, Sato prevented him and suggested that Birkins be imprisoned. After everything was done, Sato wrote a letter to Zena and told her the whole journey, which was very memorable. Sato and the others then continued their journey by riding a horse carriage. The moral we can learn from this anime is, if we have excess power, then use that power to help and protect others.